Welcome back to Screenfish Radio. I'm so glad you could join us today. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling hungry. Hungry for some snakes. It's on Shay's face when I made that joke. It's that was worth the price of that joke. As awful as it truly was that face. To this week, we're talking about the Hunger Games prequel, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and all other types of creatures that may be listed in that title as well. And this week, I'm very excited to have with me a couple of Screenfish veterans and friends, Seun Olowo-Ake and Daniel Collins. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Set years before he became the tyrannical president of Panem, 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow remains the last hope for his fading lineage. With the 10th annual Hunger Games fast approaching, the young Snow becomes alarmed when he's assigned to mentor Lucy Gray Baird from District 12. Uniting their instincts for showmanship and political savvy, they race against time to ultimately reveal who's a songbird and who's a snake. The film is available exclusively in theaters, and as always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But Daniel, Shay, what did you think of Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes?
I was kind of going into the movie as a major fan of the original series, the original, well, I would say trilogy, but I guess it was 4 movies technically. So I was going in with that kind of mindset. I know the universe. I know, a lot of the characters that were, either mentioned or had kind of like Easter eggs, stuff like that. Like I knew all of that going into this film. I will be honest, I have not read this book yet. I have read the original trilogy, but this one I was planning on reading before watching it, but time kind of slipped out of my hands. But I will be reading it to kind of see the differences. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. Again, looking at it from like a big fan of the original movies, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it felt like a Hunger Games movie, but wasn't the exact same. It was similar enough to where I was like, okay, I know this universe, I know this, this feels similar enough, but it is also different. The story was its own. The characters were, in my opinion, like thought out really well, and the acting was great for all of the characters. And I just I had a great time watching it. Honestly, like this is definitely a movie I'm gonna go and see again in theaters, and I'll definitely pick it up, on physical when it releases in 2.5 weeks. I really enjoyed it, and surprised with how well it turned out. Because it could have been really bad.
As is the case with a lot of these things, but and also I'd like to say thank you, Daniel, for picking it up on physical media, or being interested in that. I'll pick it up on disc, and that, oh, that's like heart. Anyway, what'd you think, Shay?
I also really like the film. I hadn't read any of the books or anything, and I didn't really remember the original series. I just saw it kind of like in passing. I wasn't really paying attention. Like I wasn't a big fan, I would say. So like I know a little bit of like what the universe is. I knew that President Snow is supposed to be an evil person, like in the original film. So I was like, okay, like it'll be interesting to see him being younger. And I think I read in my review, like in the trailer, he seemed kinder in the trailer. And I was like, oh, I wonder how he became the evil President Snow. And I was really interested in seeing what happened to him. So yeah, I like a good villain origin story, like kind of this, he's like an anti-hero kind of person. And I thought that was interesting. Yeah, like I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun watching it. So much so that I bought the book and kind of skimmed through it to to see what it was like. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually really agree with you both on this. I thought the film was a ton of fun. I am obviously outside the target demographic for the Hunger Games when it came out. I admit it. Um, but, I quite liked the first one. I was sort of over it by the second one. I didn't even bother seeing the third and fourth one just because I was sort of tired of the series. Quite frankly, I read the first book because I was working with teens and I wanted to know what they were into and all that stuff. But I really liked the first one. Um, this one I think it's actually like this one better than the others, and I know that we've already talked a little bit about this, but I thought they did some solid work with the characters. I'm not familiar with these younger actors for the most part. Obviously, I know Rachel Zegler. I didn't know Hunter Schafer. I didn't know Tom Blyth. I didn't, but I thought Tom Blyth did an excellent job. He was to this character what I was hoping we would get during the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, which really before prequels were a major thing, was the Star Wars prequels. And I liked the balance that he walks throughout this movie. I thought I thought he did an excellent job. They didn't have to have him be totally innocent at the beginning, but he's still empathetic. Like there's a real fine line that he walks. I want to know what you think about the length because that's my one major criticism of this film. I thought it was too long. I thought it was, which is funny because like we live in a time now where uh, big budget films are anywhere between 2.5 to 3 hours now. This is just sort of the way things are. But I did feel like this one was too long. I wondered how you two felt about that.
How long was it? I'm just Googling.
You thought it was okay?
No, how long was it? I'm just Googling how long it
Oh,
was.
it was 2 hours, 20 minutes.
It didn't feel long to me. I think I said this to you guys in the car. It's like I would have sat there for another few minutes. I don't know. It didn't. But then again, I'm not the kind of person who really notices things like that. Like unless it's a really, really boring film, but then I'm like, oh, this is a really long film. But other like when people complain about length, I'm never like whatever. Like I like films, so I just
Fair.
watch it. Yeah.
Daniel, what'd you think?
Um, honestly, I didn't feel like it was too long. I honestly felt like there could have been a bit more. I remember, I think maybe 2 or 3 times during the film when they kind of went from one scene to the next. I was almost like, I wish they had a scene in between that kind of explained some stuff. For example, um, the scene after, or the scene where Snow is going to Lucy and like she's kind of in like the wilderness playing the guitar. He just says like, "Oh, they told me you would be here." I wish there was a scene before that was kind of explaining it because the actual scene before was completely different. So I'm kind of like, "Oh, I wish there was a bit more of like, kind of explaining, maybe he is with people and they say like, "Oh yeah, she's down by, you know, wherever it exactly is." Um and just like a few other times where I was like, I just kind of wish there was maybe a quick scene that like explained what was about to happen. Um, but overall, like I don't feel like it was too long of a movie. I do remember like when it was finished and we were like leaving the theater, I was kind of thinking to myself like that didn't feel like 2.5 hours of movie. Um, and thinking about it now, like some of the other longer films that I've watched. For example, Endgame is what just over 3 hours,
Oh yeah.
and I remember watching that, and like it doesn't feel like a 3 hour movie, but there's so much happening, a lot of action that it feels like it's much more like quickly paced. So in that sense, like I agree with Seun. Like I feel like for the a length of movie, I would really only care if it was a slower or a more boring movie, and it was a longer one that where I'd be like, ugh, like this is going on forever. But this movie, honestly, like yeah, I kind of left wishing there was a little bit more. but not feeling like it was too much.
See, okay, I see this, and I think you actually sort of touched on my feelings in some ways. I want to be clear. It's not that I had a problem with the length. I had a problem with the length of the story. I wasn't bored. I thought it was well told. I actually really enjoyed it. And I think I've said this to you both. I feel like the film was they were it felt like they were trying to finish the book because they were afraid they wouldn't get to make another one. Which in some ways I actually appreciate because it didn't just assume that it's going to make money, which you get when you have a film where you're like, we're going to break it into two parts. So we know that you're going to see them. You're going to see them both. I kind of like the fact that they said, look, this is one book. We're going to do this book. And I was actually I was okay. I understand that. But after the second part, I felt like they'd wrapped up enough of the story that I didn't need 45 minutes more. I actually feel I agree with you, Daniel. I think they could have included more scenes like, well, they told me they were going to, well, let's see them tell you that they were going to be there, stuff like that. But they couldn't because they had to do that in 45 minutes, if you understand what I'm saying. Like they couldn't inflate it anymore. But the you could have stopped it after part 2 and prepped for the next one right away, if assuming that they make another one. But I got the sense they didn't know they were going to get that chance. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you know this story or not. It's pretty old story. Star Wars, and going back to Star Wars. You've both seen the original Star Wars, right? Yes. Seun's nodding no.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you for coming, Shay, and we'll just
Kick her out.
okay. Well, then this really won't hit any different for you at all. Do you know what the Death Star is?
The ship, right?
We'll work on it. It is a spaceship. It's a
Okay.
space station. It's too big. It's a big space
okay.
station. And at the end of the film, they blow up the space station, and that's the big triumph. I heard a story many years ago that when George Lucas was doing Star Wars, he wasn't sure he'd be able to make 2 and 3. Now, of course, we know the film was one of the highest grossing films of all time afterwards, but they didn't know. They just thought they were making this goofy space movie. And his plan was that if he got to make 3, the Death Star would be like the final boss in the 3rd movie. But he didn't know if he was going to make him. So he put the Death Star in the 1st movie. Now it works in that, but they changed the whole story because he didn't know if he'd get that chance, is why I'm saying this. And that's what I felt about this film. I was like, I really like the story they're telling. I'm even enjoying the story they're telling in part 3. It just felt like, oh man, I actually wish we had another film to flesh out this story. And I don't say that very often, but it felt like it almost felt like a different movie to me than the first 2 parts. I don't know what you think. You guys are sitting there silently, so you have no thoughts on that. So that's okay. Thoughts? Anything?
That makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I said,
I
I
mean,
really liked it. Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just gonna say, like, I guess, yeah, they could have ended it after part 2. But I think part 3 had enough story and enough kind of prep for a second movie that I'm not quote unquote like mad that they had a third part.
Right.
I think there were some scenes where I was like, okay, you know, did this need to happen? Maybe not, but I think overall, I feel like it kind of had enough like important details and important scenes and character moments where I'm like, okay, you know, especially when it came to Snow, like closer to the end when, you know, Lucy runs away and he's kind of looking for her. Like that's kind of almost the last straw that it you know, she tried to kill him with the snake under the scarf. So, I feel like that's kind of the breaking point for him when it comes to Lucy, and I feel like that was kind of a necessary scene to have. Um, because I almost feel like if they did stop it at the end of part two, I don't know if it would really explain enough for where he is now with like the original movies, with how kind of like nasty and villainous he is. Um, but I mean, I feel like they could have maybe shortened it and, not had some of these kind of other scenes and other plot points happening. But overall, I think it worked well enough with the rest of the movie.
Right, and hear me saying, I'm not saying that that stuff wasn't important. I actually thought that was a great finale. I just I would have been okay if they'd finished it after part two. If they were making a next one. That's why I say I felt like they didn't know if they were going to get to make another one,
Yeah.
because that could have been the start or finale. That could have been you could have fleshed that out into a slightly longer 90-minute or even 120-minute film and landed with that. Even the death of Peter Dinklage's character, I think his name is Casca Highbottom, which is just fun to say. I'm like, it just sort of happens, and it's like, oh, we could have built. Maybe it's a small complaint, but I felt it. Like when they get off the train and the guy said, and he looks at me and says, "Life's a little different here." It just seemed like they'd sort of tied together the main story and were prepping and were setting me up for the next sequel. I just didn't expect another 45 minutes. I liked it. Again, I emphasize, I liked it. That's just my issue.
Yeah.
And having not read the books myself, I wouldn't have known that going in. So as a casual viewer, it felt like they'd sort of wrapped it up, and it's like, nope. You know what I mean?
I do see what you're saying with the third part, because he does, like, at the beginning, he seems like gradually descend into more evil, like he gets more and more evil. But with the third part, it does seem like he kind of, I don't know, to me, he kind of jumps into very evil kind of very quickly. And it's like I see what you're saying, with like there's something missing, like a little bit more would help, like to see him actually go deeper into like that headspace.
Yeah. I think they could have, is all I'm saying. I thought that what they gave us was a really solid Hunger Games film. I enjoyed it. I think maybe it's even that I think it's weird that they haven't announced a sequel yet. Like, I just sort of assume that they're already planning it, but this is the only prequel book. So, what did you think of Rachel Zegler in this movie as Lucy Gray Baird? Baird. I keep wanting to say beard, but it's not that. It's...
I quite liked her character. Um, Again, like I hadn't read the book, so I didn't know much about her character. Um, I did recently find out that some information about her character that I thought was true is not. I thought that she was supposed to be like the grandmother of Katniss. Like I had read that online. People were like, "Oh yeah, like it's Katniss's grandmother." Katniss being, the title character from the first set of movies and books. Um, so I was like, "Oh, like that's cool." Like it's kind of being tied in, and this kind of is going to show why Snow doesn't like Katniss in the original series, but apparently she has no relation to Katniss.
Oh,
Um, which is cool. Um, but Lucy's character, overall, I think she was pretty cool. I mean, like most of the characters, most of the tributes, she was just kind of plucked out of where she is, thrown into a, a zoo, literal zoo cage, and then put into the games. Um, obviously it looks a lot different in the original series. Again, this is 64 years in the past. But yeah, I don't know. I thought her character was pretty cool. I liked the dynamic she had with Snow. They kind of bounced off of each other really well. Um, I this isn't really, her character, but the kind of romantic part of the story I don't think was really needed. Um, but yeah, I think in an interview, um, Rachel Zegler really kind of hit it on the head with kind of describing her character, especially describing her versus like the Katniss character. She said that Lucy Gray Baird is a performer who was forced to fight, and
Mhm.
Katniss is a fighter who was forced to perform. And I think that really hits it, like it hits the nail on the head. Like, I mean, her Lucy's whole storyline is that she is this songbird. She travels with the covey and performs, songs, dancing, um, and again was thrown into an arena and told to fight, and that's not what she does. She survives, she sings, she is, this entertainer, and was told to do pretty much like the opposite of what um she does. um but yeah, I think she was a cool character. I would like to know more. I think it would be cool if they do another movie. I'd like to learn more about her, and especially with the end, she kind of disappears, she runs off. So we have no idea where she is right now. She could be, you know, caught in the capital by Snow, whatever. She could be in the wilderness. I'd love to learn more about her and just kind of see, um, where she goes from here. But overall, I enjoyed her character, and I think Rachel played her really, really well.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I'm actually Shay. What did you think? I'll let you say before I say anything.
Basically the same. I don't have a lot to say, honestly. Like I thought she was cool. I think I went in assuming we would also kind of follow her a bit more, um, which we didn't. And I guess that was fine because it's more Snow's story. So yeah, kind of the same, like who is she? Kind of intrigued by who she is.
And she's not made of sugar.
No.
I love that line. That was great. Or that's what she says? I think, isn't it? I'm not made of sugar, or I'm not all sweet, or something. I think I'm not made of sugar.
Yeah.
I have to admit, like again, having no familiarity with the story, I was a little nervous because I was like, okay, now Zegler's one of these people now that while she's in it, we want her to sing. So I was like, how are they going to use this? Like, is this a musical? Is it like, 5, 6, 7, 8? It's like I thought they incorporated the music beautifully and it fit the character. It made sense. I love the way that you put that. If that Daniel, though, that she's a performer forced to fight. Um, it was interesting to see the Hunger Games on the other side because what I do remember about the original films is that it was so polished.
Hmm.
It was all it was a show by then, and this time they're struggling for ratings. Um, which almost feels like the franchise. It's like, how do we how do we get people watching this again? But I no, I wasn't sure how they were gonna use her, if at all they were gonna use. But I thought the music works beautifully. It fits. Um, and I don't know about you two, but it really reminded me of like American Idol. I mean, it always did sort of before, but just hearing them say, "Oh, if we tell them a story about them, then people will watch." And that's the conversations I imagine in my head taking behind the scenes of so many reality shows. It's like, "Oh, we need to tell them stories."
Mm.
That's it. Um, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I loved there was and because of that, I think these were grittier. This film felt grittier to me than the original films. I don't know if that's the case or not. Shay's pondering.
I don't really remember the original. I was looking at Daniel because I was wanting to see what he was thinking.
Oh, all I saw was this. But I mean, like, the arena is just sort of a pit. Um, the drones don't work. You've got a host that doesn't really know how to entertain, although he was the most entertaining part of this film, bar none. Um, Jason
Yeah,
Schwartzman is such a joy in this movie.
yeah. I think it definitely was grittier than the kind of the original set. And I think it does kind of have to do with the fact that um the focus on these movies wasn't the games. Um, with the at least the first two movies, Hunger Games and Catching Fire, like most of the movie takes place in the games. You have a few scenes throughout where it's like, some of the other characters who aren't in the actual arena, but for the most part, once the movie gets to the actual games section, like you're in that. Whereas with this one, a lot of the story beforehand, is happening. The games come up, and we have quite a few scenes that are in the arena. Um, but a lot of it is again, it's snow, so it's outside of the arena. It's what all of the academy students, the first year mentors, their decisions. It's stuff they're going through and stuff like that. Again, focusing on snow, so it's a lot more like the games are kind of put on the back burner. Um, we do, of course, have some important scenes that do take place. I mean, Snow goes into the arena to, get his friend Sejanus Plinth out of out of there. Um, so it's was quite different and definitely a darker, grittier, harsher feeling, I think, overall. Um, and even like the few scenes where it was a lighter tone, like for example, scenes with Lucy singing at like this little jamboree or whatever, and some of the scenes when they are by the lake, it's there's just so few of them.
Mm.
So it doesn't really have that sense of like, oh, we're trying to make it a lighter movie or whatever. It's this is a dark movie where there's a few lighter moments. And I quite liked that. Like, it in my opinion, it made it more realistic for what I would expect to be happening if that was like a real life situation.
You know what, Daniel? I think you might have actually tapped into why I dropped out of the series because I liked the first two. It was because I felt like, how many more times can we do this and watch Katniss win in the end? Like it's the same premise. Now, by the third, I know the third or fourth go a different way. Like I understand it's always going to be part of the franchise, and I know the third and fourth go a different way. It's the rebellion, yada yada yada. But I just was sort of out by then because the second was like, oh well, she's gonna live. Here we go. But maybe that's what I liked about this one so much is you had the games, but it wasn't the most important thing that was going on. And this one dealt a lot with the world outside the games, and I liked that. It felt different. Um, yeah, I think in you mentioning it there, that may have just clarified it for me of why I sort of left the series in the first place because I want to know more of the characters better. And I think this one did a good job of that. I wanted to ask you both a quick question here. the film and Daniel's saying no. No, you can't ask me a quick question. Okay, I'll ask you a long question. Um, I wanted to ask you both what you thought about the film's finale. And again, we're spoilers here, but I like uh, the conversation between President Snow and Viola Davis, whose name, so help me, I have no idea what it is.
Olivia Call.
Do you know it?
Dr. Olivia Call.
What?
Dr. Olivia Call.
Sure. Um, she was so over the top in this movie. I don't even care what her name was. She just practically was going like this every scene. Um, but they have a conversation about what the games are for.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like an interesting place to land because originally the tie was to threaten or to remind the people of what they've done when they tried to rebel, blah blah blah, and then he just says it's about winning. And I wondered what you thought of that turn of phrase because it's used here in a toxic sense. Of course, in the games, winning means survival. But I just wondered what you thought about that motivation for the games and what it means to you.
I think he said something like it reflects the real world because the real world is kind of like a Hunger Games. And so the games are showing us who we are kind of thing. And then he's like, I'm a victor. So it's like
Oh, that's
I
it.
really
I'm a victor. Being a victor. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's that's what I found most interesting with the film was kind of like his it's literally his kind of motivations in life is what the Hunger Games is almost. It's like I need to survive, and so I'm gonna do that by any means necessary. And if that means people around me are gonna die, then so be it. That's kind of like how he thought. But if you think about like survival, it's not like it seems like it's not something he wants to do. Like he doesn't want to send his friend to the hanging tree or like want to betray all these people. It seems it just feels like, well, if I don't do this, then I'm gonna lose everything I'm working so hard to get, or I'm gonna lose my opportunities, or my family's gonna still be in lack or in poverty. So I need to get rid of you so that I can help my family. It's almost like a very righteous, justifiable way of thinking, which if you think of the games, like if I don't kill you, then I'm gonna die. So I have to kill you. That's kind of like how he sees the world anyway. So I like that like by the end of it, he kind of makes it clear, like, oh, this is the Hunger Games are real life almost. This is who we are. Because I always see that in real life, like in our actual real world. That's how people function. It's like we don't what she said like if filled with the terror of becoming prey, we become predator. If I don't end you, you're gonna end me. So I'll end you first before you end me. That's kind of the cycle of like the way the world is, with the evil in the world.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, and that is interesting because it feels like a very honest, probably his most honest moment in the film. Um, yeah, it's so interesting. Daniel, what do you think about being a victor? You're right. The word is victor, not winning.
I mean, honestly, I completely agree with what Seun said. Um, but yeah, I mean, just looking at Snow, he lives in the capital, but he is an orphan. Living with his grandmam, so I'm assuming like his grandmother and his cousin in a an apartment that is like they're getting evicted from. He doesn't have the money to pay for tuition for like the academy he wants to attend. So for his situation and to him, getting into this academy, being a mentor, being top of the class, winning the Plinth prize is being a victor, is winning. And the situation that he's in is, to get anywhere in life, he has to win. He has to get the Plinth Prize to be able to pay for the academy, which is going to teach him to do this and become this, which is going to give him the money to, provide nice things for his family and, to live in a place where, they're not being evicted from. And I think, again, agreeing with Seun, like that's, if he doesn't win, somebody else does. If he doesn't win the Plinth Prize, somebody else is going to get it. Somebody else is going to get into the academy and da 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 da. So, he has to be the one to do it. And he, I think, gets to a point where he doesn't care, how he gets it. He technically breaks quite a few of the rules to, help Lucy win, or if not breaks, kind of finds a loophole. Like, for example, with the drones, he sends like, what is it, like 10 water drones in when Lucy's, pretty much going to be killed by 4 tributes or 5 tributes. He sends in all those drones because he knows the drones don't work properly and they're going to be flying in at 60 miles an hour and, crash into them and either kill them or knock them off, off of their feet to give Lucy the chance to run away and hide or fight back, which technically not supposed to do, but also doesn't specifically say you can't do that. So, he's really working the system in his favor, and gets to a point where he doesn't care who he hurts, except for, himself. He wants to make sure that he's the one who's surviving. He's the one who's winning. But I think overall, it's not he wants to win just for himself. At least he wants to win for his family. So I guess there's that kind of redeeming part of it. But I mean, overall, we know what he becomes in the end with the original films. So, is it really worth it? I guess for him it was, but for everyone else, including his family, we know that in the originals, I guess, well, Steve, you haven't seen this, but his cousin Tigress is in the original set of movies. And in the original set, Tigress is actually on the side of, I guess I wouldn't say the side of the rebellion. I don't know her exact stance, but she helps Katniss. Like, she hides them out overnight when peacekeepers are looking for Katniss, wanting to, kill her and her squad. She hides them out and protects them, and then gives them some clothes to kind of hide within the people of the capital. She gives them like very big, like kind of fur coats and stuff. So she's, definitely against what Snow is promoting and what Snow wants to do. So realistically, in the end, the people who he may have been, wanting to protect and wanting to give a better life to didn't want that better life at the cost of what he did. So I think winning is very skewed in this this movie, but I mean also in the originals. Again, you win the Hunger Games, that's great. You have a great life, but 23 or 22 other people just had to die for you to get this good life. Possibly you had to be the one to kill some of them. So it's, it's you're winning, but mentally, emotionally, physically, you may not be winning.
It's interesting to compare it to the games because the games are such a metaphor for him in a lot of ways, because you see somebody who is, like you said, I think it was Shay that said he's just trying to protect himself, and Daniel talked about his family. He just doesn't want to be in the situation he's in when the film starts. He's embarrassed. He's in his sister makes him a suit with buttons from the tiles on the floor, if I remember correctly. and he passes it off as high fashion to give the aura that he is of a certain stature. He's ashamed of the fact that he doesn't have any money at the beginning of the film, and he's determined to sort of keep that. But then you have these games that are held up against it, which is just like kill or be killed. You have the choice. So it's established. It's a culture that demands winning. The country of Panem is a culture that demands winning, but winning is only crushing your enemies. Winning is power, which I think is so fascinating. And now, and they didn't go too far with it. With I think it's Lucy Gray. Is that her? I keep wanting to call her Macy Gray, but she's a singer. With Lucy Gray's character, Lucy Gray's character admits that she's got a bit of a dark side, but she's leaning into more compassion and trying to find ways to keep others safe, even in the middle of the games. Like, she's looking out for this guy that she came with, and she feels bad that she's killed the young girl that she kills with the poison. She's still trying to hold on to that, but then at the end you hear her say, I'm not all made of sugar. Which between her and Snow creates an interesting sort of dichotomy that suggests that both have their dark side. So I'm just wondering, for you both, what do you think it means to fight our dark side? What do you think it takes to do that? Because I mean, these are fictional characters, obviously, but with these characters, they sort of both show their true colors and both go different ways.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's a deep question. And if you think about like the idea of self-preservation and how, because for Snow, and I think maybe for a lot of us, like the reasons why we would do certain things that are on the dark side is because of things like fear and self-preservation. Like, I don't think most people are like just truly evil. Like, I want to just go cause chaos because, so it's born out of this truly, like, it's not really an evil place. It's kind of like, oh, I'm scared. I need to protect myself. I need to protect my family. And so, you know how like in the film he says it's what you love the most that destroys you and destroys us. It's like that's like the end goal is, I need to protect myself and my family. And so everything else is whatever. So I think like fighting our dark sides, it does take a lot of courage to not put yourself as the end goal. Like, your self-preservation isn't the most important thing to you. Do you know what I mean? If you start thinking outside of yourself and thinking about other people, like putting others before you, that's what your focus is. I think that helps us fight our dark side, but I think it's very hard sometimes, especially when you're faced truly with like life or death situations, or situations where you're like, I don't know how I can survive this. It takes great, like really great love and great compassion for other people to come out of that. Yeah. So I don't know how easy it is, but I think that's that's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a tough question. I think it really depends on what each individual would view as a dark side, because or viewing specific actions as a dark side. Because I think, looking at this movie, Snow, I don't think he really thinks of what he's doing as what we are looking at as a dark side.
Mm-hmm.
To him, it's self-preservation. It is, trying to win a prize, to provide, financial stability, provide a better life, get into a university. And he knows like the risks and what he has to do to get those things. And because of that, I don't think he really views a lot of his actions as, bad or bad enough to be considered like a dark side. Whereas I think Lucy's quite the opposite. You know, she has a warm heart. She has definitely a big heart for others. You know, as you mentioned, Steve, during the games, like she was the first part of them, she was focused on, you know, making sure that her district, um, the tribute from her district, I believe it was Jessup, um, is doing well. Like, you know, she knows that he has like a bat bite on his neck, so he's not doing well. You know, he's definitely getting sicker and sicker with each day, each hour, each minute. But her focus right off the bat is, let's get him away from the people who are trying to kill him. Let's give him kind of a, you know, a pillow to sleep on. He can rest on my shoulder. Um, you know, and once she realizes he's too far gone, then, you know, she is, I guess she technically wasn't the one who uh killed him, but she moves on and she's like, okay, he's gone. I need to make sure that I'm surviving. Um, and again, we see with the rat poison water, she was more so okay giving it to the people who were trying to kill her. I believe Coral was that tribute's name, and her crew, the careers of that games. But once it's the other tribute, I believe her name was Dill. Um, she accidentally drinks the water and dies almost right away. And Lucy's heartbroken because that was not, you know, at all. She killed an innocent person in her eyes.
Mm.
Um, so I think, you know, looking at Lucy's character, um, I think her view of a dark side is much more um much more black and white. I think it's much easier in her eyes that somebody is on the dark side based on their actions, what they say, what they do. Whereas with Snow, he's more looking at it as maybe more shades of gray. Um, for himself, I don't think he really views a lot of his stuff as darker gray. Um, whereas Lucy definitely is kind of like, you know, whoa, this is maybe too much. I mean, um, again, her voice cracks when she's saying that she's killed people, whereas Snow's like just kind of randomly is like, oh yeah, three is enough for me. Like he just kind of tosses it out there like it's whatever. At that point, Lucy only knows of two, and he kind of hides who this third person is and plays it off like, oh, that third person is my old self, my past self. I killed him off. I'm a different person now. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't believe it. So I'm trying to figure out who's that third person at that point in time. Because I think at that point he hadn't killed High Bottom yet.
It was,
So
It was her, wasn't it?
Janus. No, so Janus, his friend, the one that went to the hanging tree.
Oh,
oh
interesting. I hadn't considered that. But he would take that on himself. Yes, he did.
Oh,
You're right. He did kill him in that sense. He didn't do
okay.
it with his hands, but he did it with his by reporting him. That's true.
His actions, yeah. Okay, I guess that's true. I was more thinking like a, you know, more literal, like he took a gun to someone or hands or whatever. But I guess yeah, he could have just been talking about Sejanus. But yeah, Lucy didn't know that at that point. So, you know, lying, playing it off like it's, you know, something else. I think he definitely looks at, you know, the dark side in a much different way than Lucy does.
I wanted to ask, like, if you think, do you think that's because of the system he was in? Because, like, if you watch the film, if you're thinking of like villains and heroes, just like very black and white, but like the villain in this movie didn't seem to be him. It seemed to be like the games and like Viola Davis's character and the people who were orchestrating that whole thing. They seemed more the bad guys in the film. Um, and so it felt like he was just kind of playing with what he was given. It's like, well, I live in this world. I kind of have to function in this world, so I have to operate with what these people are doing. Like it seemed like if he was born in a different place, like Lucy, she doesn't live in the capital with all these things going on. So it's almost like she has the freedom to be more good. Whereas if you live in a place where, like you said, you have to survive in this place, you have to be a winner, then you almost are forced to play this game.
Yeah, and he's doing it before the games even starts. Like I said, he's posing to try and show everybody that no, I belong. No, I do it. So he's already I like that idea, Shay, when you talk about that, cause can culture create? Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. And I think that this particular space, um, I mean, we see sides. Here's the thing: we see sides of him that are empathetic. The best villains in stories are not just bad. Like a guy like Thanos. Thanos in Marvels. In all seriousness, Thanos believes fully that what he's doing is for the best of humanity, but it's horrible. In his mind, though, he's framed it a certain way that this is how I have to live to accomplish that. And in fact, in his case, like when he accomplishes it, he's like, yeah, I'm good now. Like he really, that's his motivation. Snow is this franchise's Darth Vader, as compared to going back to Star Wars. We know he's the villain, but we see glimpses of this other guy who cares about his family, who's just like, yeah, look, just don't judge me for what my dad did or the way I live. So in a very real sense, I think, yeah, like this culture demands that he become this, but he also has a choice all the way. And I think they talk about choice a few times in this film. This is a character where every little slip, every little compromise he makes, I mean, it's one of those things that by the end you go, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a little compromise, little compromise, and then too far. I thought it was well done, and yeah, I agree with you. I think there's something to be said. It's not culture's fault. Like he's responsible for his choices, but it does set him up for it. I mean, certainly the games are an example of this. It's like if you don't win, you're done. And remember that. Don't forget. And I think we see that in our culture today too. We see lots of people that say, "Oh, well, they're the villain." Well, are they? The cards are stacked against them here, and here. I mean, but
It's so scary too to think, sorry, like if you
oh,
put
go
this
ahead.
in real life, of like, even with like the world of the Hunger Games, where like the reason why the game started is because there was, from my understanding, there was like kind of like a rebellion
Mm.
that the like were fighting against the capital, and then the capital was like, okay, we're gonna punish you for centuries for this thing that you did. Um, and like it's that thing of like, when they say like hate begets hate, and like this person fights and then this person retaliates and then there's more retaliation, it goes back and forth and back and forth. And if you think about like, I think about this too with like wars and stuff, like people growing up, like kids growing up in situations where like all they know is you killed my parents, so I hate you. Like this is their world. And someone is on the other side of like, well, you did this, so do you know what I mean? And then they grow up with that kind of like, uh, uh, this is what they know. They grow up with that person,
Experience.
then yeah, that experience. But then that drives them to certain situations and certain actions that then birth more of that. And then even thinking with like Coriolanus and like how he's like, I don't really want to do this, but I'll do it because I can survive. But then he grows up in this and now he's like the big guy, like
Yeah.
doing it to other people. And then how that just continues over and over again. If somebody new is gonna do the same thing. Yeah.
The cycle of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird looking at his character from like this movie to the originals, because I definitely agree, like a lot of what he did was I don't really want to do this, but I have to. I feel like I have to do it. So and I think if they do make a second movie to this, I assume they would touch more upon it because, again, in the original series, he's the president. He's literal like the top of the food chain or food pyramid or food, whatever shape we want to use.
The food. Wait, you make it sound like you got your breads and cereals, and then you got it's like
You have your 12 and then 11 and then no. But like
ouch. That's really dark if you keep going with it. But anyway,
well, they are hungry. Um, yeah, like he is the guy. He's the number one guy. So I'm just kind of wondering, if he had this empathetic side to him that realized, these actions are wrong. This thing is wrong. Like, he was friends with Sejanus, who was against the games and wanted to help the people in the various districts. Why is it when he kind of became that number one, he didn't, kind of switch over and be like, LOL, no more Hunger Games. Let's try to help. Let's divide the resources and whatever. That way there's not, some districts where people are living in nicer conditions versus, District 12 where people are living in like mud and it's just like, breathing in coal mining air every single day. Like, why didn't he, once he had that power, he had that control, why didn't he use it for good? I'm hoping that we kind of get to see where he really does kind of switch over and become over consumed with the darkness or the dark side. Because I really do feel like at the end of the movie he wasn't fully there yet. So I want to know, like, what is the events, what are the actions, what happens that really breaks him fully.
It's interesting because in the book, like skimming it, I feel like the movie made him more likable. Because in the book, he's so calculated from the beginning. Like he's not even like in the movie, they're like, "Oh, you're friends with Sejanus," and he's like, "No, I just tolerate him." But it seems like he's lying. Like he actually does care about Sejanus, and he just doesn't want to look uncool in front of the other people. But in the book, it does feel like he truly doesn't like this guy. Like he pretends to care about him for some reason. Like he's reading it, I'm like, I hate this guy so much. Like he's just so he'll think something and then say something completely different to what he was thinking. He's that like calculated. So it's interesting, like the movie, it seemed like they wanted to make him a bit more likable for the film, which obviously then kind of, you do need like a longer road then to, okay, how did he now become President Snow if he's actually like, he does care in this film.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I get the sense that they were trying to get you to the end because they didn't know they were going to get another shot. So, like, by the end, he's wearing the garb, but they haven't gone fully far enough yet to make him entirely evil. Like, we know that we believe he cares about Lucy Gray, and and there is that sort of mixed thing with his friend. In the book, they may have just said, "Look, we just want to do this, and let's just go full tilt. We get into his head. You can show him as more evil." But I really like in the film they really give him a sense of portray him with a sense of conflict, which I thought was really interesting. To you both, this has been phenomenal, but we're running out of time. I want to keep going, but we're running out of time. We should screen it or skip it. The Hunger Games, Songbirds and Snakes. Screen it or skip it.
Screen it.
Meh, just skip it.
Sleep
no,
through it.
In my opinion, definitely screen it. I think it would be wise to watch the originals first. That way, you kind of know the world and some of the characters that get mentioned. But if you're going at it even not watching the originals, I think it's really enjoyable. The fun movie. It's one that you'll be thinking throughout, and honestly, I was on literally the edge of my seat throughout watching most of it. Um, so yeah, in my opinion, definitely screen it, buy it on physical when it comes out.
Love the physical media that you're popping there. It's a screen it for me. I had a blast. My complaint about it being a little long is minimal. I felt it, and I didn't know there was more story to tell. So I thought there might be another 5-10 minutes, and it just went an entirely different direction. But I enjoyed it. It was good. I thought it was. I actually, Daniel, I'll say the opposite. If you haven't seen the originals, I would say don't, because you don't need this. This is a rare example where it's not one cheap pop after another to the original film. You can get to know these characters for the first time in this film, and I actually appreciated that aspect of it. Like I said, I saw the first two and not the last two, and I didn't feel like, oh, I'm so lost. Like, I don't know what any of this is. This was a true prequel. You could watch it and then go back and see what happens to him if you want. But I thought it was great. I actually really enjoyed this for a shall I say non-Marvel blockbuster. Like, I mean, most of the big superhero or non-superhero blockbuster. I thought for youth, I thought it was great. Really good. Thank you to you both. I really appreciate your time. I love our conversations. Shay's going. Look at it. Shay's doing the double. Oh, you can't see it. I really appreciate you both. But a reminder for you at home that you can find us wherever your favorite podcasts are available, and you can find us, like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button, please. And if you go to the podcast page at screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More, some small group questions to get the conversation started with where you are about the film. And we will be back next week, and we are looking forward to that. But thank you to you both again. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.